Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. And this video is brought to you by this HWBot result for 3D Mark Firestrike with an HD 7970. I'm currently 11th in the ranking of 201 cards, and this is the result I got with my HD 7970 Matrix. And yeah, today we're gonna go over that card. We're going to make a cut to the test bench and show the card running. And this is basically what I was able to achieve with, just water cooling and some BIOS optimizations. Turns out my card, even though it has a pretty weak core, has really good memory. Like, that memory clock isn't the highest you can find on 3D on HWBot, but that is very, very, like, we can go into the BIOS modifications I made, because that is very, very, very fast memory. Hence the GPU score. If you look into the ranking, so I'm here at 11, basically everyone else above me, except those two, is running some sort of sub-ambient cooling solution. And I was told by Salty, or Salty Croissant as he's called here, that these two are definitely actually running chilled and not H2O. I don't think they provide pictures. Oh, that's... okay, that's insulated. That kinda looks like chilled, and yeah, this doesn't provide. But like their clocks on their core, it's not unheard of to reach like 1350. In fact, my 7970 Lightning can do that. It can do that just fine with the stock air heatsink. But 1375 sounds a bit very optimistic. And yeah, like basically I was told by Salty that my result is the highest for ambient for an HD 7970. And yeah, and even it gets even better if you look into the 280X ranking, because if you like know your way around AMD cards, you will know that the R9 280X did I say 90? I mean 280X, this one, is essentially an HD 7970. And if we look at Firestrike here, yeah, I would be in 4th place right now. And yeah, so this is another one of Salty's submissions that I was trying to compare against. And if you look at the let's close these two. If you look at the GPU score, yeah, I'm actually higher than that. My overall is lower because he's running a 5900X, and I'm running an 8700K. Like, and my memory is worse. I'm running some CJR, he's running some BDI. So yeah, that's why my overall score is low, but my GPU score is higher actually, and that's kind of interesting because he is placed second for the 280X. And there's a few things about my 7970 Matrix that actually, like, it is a lot more like a 280X than it is than a 7970. Like, this card, if you wouldn't know what it is and you would compare it to 7970 and 280X, you would probably come to the conclusion that it's a 280X. Because after checking, I noticed the difference is nowhere near as big as I thought. But, like, I mean, it's kind of annoying that you can't, like, filter out sub-ambient results, but you kind of see a lot of results here that don't break 1300 MHz core, except this one, which is on phase change. This is dice, this is dice. This is chilled and he's just made it to 1300. This seems kinda high for chilled. I think this is more than, well, whatever. Like, phase change. This stock way below 1300. Water 1300 flat. I mean, 1300 flat, I think you can reach with water if you have a good card. 1240, 1212, 1276, 1215, 1233. There's a 1305 on air. Let's look at that one. This looks a bit weird. Okay, no picture of the rig, of course. They are also running B-Die. They're on a 2700X. Wow, their graphics score is really low. But their physics score is 2000 points higher than mine. Yeah. But like basically, if you look at the 280X, the core clocks like are pretty low. And then you see for memory, there's a lot of 1700 and 1800 megahertz submissions. And when you look at the 7970 ranking, you see that there's a lot more cards breaking 1300 megahertz, and there's a lot more cards that, well, actually, yeah, actually, no, that's a lie. Well, memory clocks look also pretty high here. This guy's went to 2000. Really? Still scores a lot lower than me, though. Yeah, he's probably not. Yeah, okay, he's probably not running the optimizations that I am. Okay, like basically, if you go after the average core clock, my card at 1290 with like water sounds a lot more like a 280X than it does than a 7970, because I have a 7950 and a 7970 Lightning that do 1350 just fine. On 280Xs, that's, as you can see, that doesn't really happen. So yeah, my 7970 behaves a lot more like a like a 280X than it does than a 7970. I was thinking about actually submitting it to this ranking because it just behaves like one, and also actually in software it doesn't decide what it is. Like it says both it is an R9200 series and an HD 7900 series, but it does say 7970 on the PCB. So here we go. So I'm 11th and not 4, because I would be in between 4 and 3 in this ranking. But yeah, this is still a very decent ranking. I'm certainly not done. If you look at these pictures, we're gonna take a look at the test bench soon. So yeah, it's just what I usually do when I run things on water. I just put the water block in it, and then I had my 2 fans blowing up the card to cool the memory and VRM. Which these 4 uncooled memory chips, if you look at the PCB overview that I made about this card, I complained that these might heat up than the others and reduce your overall memory clock. Yeah, once I put my airflow over these, my memory clock went up by not very little, but by 35 megahertz. Just putting more airflow over these. So yeah, it is an issue. Yeah, here is the water cooling loop. It's a 360 rad push-pull. And here's a picture of the EVC that I'm using to control the SteelJ A22AG that controls VCore on the Matrix. You do not have memory controller, like you don't have memory voltage control on the Matrix, because all the 8 PWM signals of the A22AG go into VCore on the Matrix, so memory voltage is still stock, which is one of the parts where I can improve. Like, I could potentially get to 1800 megahertz on this. I could potentially tune some subtimings on my RAM. And one more thing is I could also just go down. You can see I'm at 34 degrees ambient. I mean idle. That's pretty high. Like, coming from NVIDIA cards, that's a very high temperature. My load was up to 52 degrees. If this was an NVIDIA card, I would be genuinely concerned. For an AMD card, I don't know. Like, I wouldn't know what could be wrong with the mount. This should work fine. Maybe this is just how AMD handles their temperature reporting. So, yeah. And yeah, so this is the scores. Got some decent points from it. if I submitted it here, I would have gotten, yeah, more. But hey, don't really care about the internet points. Like, being on the first page, like, okay, I'm just outside of the top 10, but that's gonna. I just need a little colder ambient, because I was running this card at like 23 degrees ambient. So if I just wait for tonight, when I open my window at night and take a fan and blow in cold air into my room, I can get to 80 degrees ambient pretty easily. That might get me 10 extra megahertz on the core, and that would definitely, like, I'm so close to the 10th place. I don't think I'll be beating 9th anytime soon, but like 10th, yeah, I can take that. I can take that score down if I just get a little bit more core or memory. And yeah, I think I've rambled. I think I have plugged my own result enough, and we can now actually look at the test bench. So see you after the cut. So we now have the card running. Since it is later now, like a bit later than when I made the score, the ambient has come down a bit because my window is open. So we're now in 20 degrees, or like, well, I mean, if you're round, it would be 21. But yeah, our ambient is a bit lower now, which means I might actually be able to demonstrate the highest I got to pass. The score that I uploaded to HWBot is at 1290. In an earlier take of this video, I was only able to show 1285 running, because 1290 only passed about 2 times, and it's very, very flaky. But now where ambient has come down like 3 to 4 degrees, I might actually be able to demonstrate 1290 running. But before we show the card running, let's get into some of those optimizations I was talking about. So the first optimization is using this driver, Adrenaline 20.12.1. I went through several drivers. Some of them just didn't score as well. Some of them literally broke, like in weird ways. Like you couldn't apply a clock offset, even a negative one, or it would just crash the system. Or like it would display like different clocks and voltages, but it would actually be running stock. Or like you would apply clocks and stuff fine, but your score would actually be lower than stock. And like, yeah, I went through several drivers until I was told by Salty again. He's been a huge help, by the way, to use this driver. And this one has worked fine. There's still some issues that just seem to be a general thing with this card. But this driver has worked the best of all the drivers I've tested so far, and it has also been scoring fine. Then the next modification I made is turning off tessellation, which is HWBot legal. So you go into settings, graphics, advanced. Actually, it's on right now. So override application settings, and then you say off. So now tessellation is off. This actually brings you a lot of extra score, like about 2,000 points. With tessellation on, I'm getting about 10,000 points, not 12,000 like I got on the HWBot result. So this is similar to like LOD tweak on NVIDIA, which is also a HWBot legal. Just that tessellation just brings you a lot more score. And now we get into the possibly, well, not just possibly, the biggest, best tweak I have. And that one you can see here. So looking at those memory timings, you'll notice they're all the same. So this is a modded BIOS where basically, like, for every couple hundred megahertz, as you can see here, an AMD card changes to a different preset of memory timings. Now what I've done here is I took the 1250 megahertz timings and applied them to everything that comes after 1250 megahertz as well. So now I'm running 1785 and I'm still at the 1250 timings. This is an insane increase in score. Actually, this is such a big advantage that I'm actually asking myself whether this is HWBot legal. I mean, people are using it. Like, I think Lumi, who's currently holding the first place on HD7970, he is also using a modified BIOS made by him and Buildzoid, which I also think modifies memory timings. And he also has a pretty big lead over everyone else. So, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't know why modding memory timings would be illegal, because if modding memory timings in BIOS is illegal, why is the EVC legal? Or why are Volt mods in general legal? Or why are any modifications of any kind legal? Like, if you ban one kind of mod, then where do you stop? So this, I've been told it's perfectly legal, and I can't find any reason why it shouldn't be legal. It's just, this is basically what brought me this far in the ranking. Like, this is why I'm like beating people who legit run liquid nitrogen. Because this 1785 memory is like not normal 1785. With the stock BIOS, with the stock timings, I was actually able to pass at 1900 memory in Firestrike. So switching to the 1250 MHz timings, which I was also told by Salty, most people take the 1375 timings. Me and also Salty himself were able to use 1250 timings on our cards, like me for this card and he on his 280X, where he also got it to 1750 MHz. So my memory is slightly better than his, but his core is, well, I mean, admittedly he ran at close to 0 degrees, I'm at ambient. Not even like cold ambient. My room is like, I think Earth's average temperature is 18 degrees. So I think that shouldn't count as cold ambient if it's literally the average temperature. And I'm over that, as you just saw, we're at like 20 to 21. So this is basically why my score is so high, with a card that's just underwater and not even running that high clocks. And like, this mod is really easy to do. All you need is just a hex editor, like this one, like HXD, whatever it's called. Yeah. You just open a file, like, yeah, this is the stock BIOS, and then you would just look for these, like, you would just Control F and look for the hex values of this. And then you copy that, look for the hex value of this, and then replace these hex values with the hex values from here. And that's how you get that modified BIOS. That's all you need. And well, then you need ATI flash to like flash the BIOS. Buildzoid has a video on this, how to do this in detail, but well, yeah. I'll show AC quality for people who care. Yeah, it's pretty meh. But like on AMD, I've been told AC quality literally doesn't matter. So, yeah. And yeah, those are pretty much the optimizations. So this specific driver, tessellation off, and the memory timings, and then of course also high performance in Windows, and like setting Windows to best performance in quality, and also like setting MS Afterburner but then closing MS Afterburner once you run at benchmark, because that also costs a bit of performance. And then in terms of voltage control, I'm of course using the EVC2 SX. Now Asus would like you to believe that this card is using an ASP1211 PWM controller, but yeah, that's literally just a CHL-A228G that's rebranded by Asus. So yeah, here we have the CHL-A228G control. Once over I2C, where you can see it's running in 8+0 mode, so we, like, even though we have loop 2 control here, it doesn't apply, it's not used for anything. Also loop 2 temperature is always at 26 and that never changes. And then on PM bus we can see a few more metrics. We can see output voltage, which you can see is already set to 1.45 volts. Under load this goes to 1.425, which is basically where it stopped scaling. Or more like, it still scaled up to 1.475, but it didn't actually give me any higher clocks, it just took longer to crash. So that's why I settled for this. Then you can also see some other things like input power and efficiency, which seems kind of wrong because it's always stuck around 50%. I do think, like, okay, the temperature reading is the same as loop 1 temperature on the I2C thing, so that's probably right. Output voltage is probably right, and output power is probably right, and then current. It's just input voltage also sounds plausible, but input current, I don't know. Input power and efficiency are probably very wrong. So there's something weird reading there. So yeah, so to get voltage control, we just set gamer mode to enabled and set the voltage we want. You can set an LOC, but 100% is already the lowest amount of droop. It still droops like those 25 millivolts, but yeah, it's really manageable. Yeah. So I think we could run the card now and see if it works out. I have my doubts that it will be able to pass 1290. Like, I mean, ambient is colder now, yeah, but it took me it took me like 10 attempts to get like one pass. Like, I got 2 passes, one without tessellation, one with tessellation. And it took me like 10 tries to get that one without tessellation that eventually made its way to HWBot. Because like those 5 megahertz from like 1285 to 1290 actually gave me like 200 points in overall. And I think like 300 points in GPU score. So yeah. Actually also for memory clock, I was able to run Firestrike GT1 at up to 1800 MHz on the memory. It's just once it got to GT2, a very specific spot in GT2, basically frame perfect, always the same time, it would actually crash at any higher than 1785. Like, it wouldn't even artifact really, like it would artifact a bit because like we're pushing stuff here, but it would not artifact like super crazy. And then basically frame perfect, it would start artifacting extremely, and then within 1 second it would crash. Often so much that you had to press the reset button, like it would not come back. At 1785 that hasn't happened yet, but since the camera is rolling, who knows. Things always seem to be going wrong when the camera's rolling. We did pass GT1 with 1290, though I feel it's really much a heat issue, because at 1290 I had plenty of runs that like crashed at the end of GT2, or even in combined. I had a couple runs that crashed. But this seems pretty good. Also because I just turned the PC on, the memory is probably still colder than it was at the end of my last session. So you see this black flickering a bit, but like this is far away from the worst artifacting I saw, and it crashed. Yeah. That's what I was talking about with when the camera's rolling. So where's our temperature at? Yeah, we went to like 48, 49, 50. Yeah, this is about 2 degrees lower than what I got the last time I tried to run 1290. So ambient is helping a bit. Or probably just because the water cooling loop is still kind of cold. Okay, I don't want to take chances to like have another run happen here that eventually crashes. So I'm just going to do 1285. Now we can also just leave MS Afterburner on, so you can see the metrics, because I'm not going for score here. So yeah. Now we wait again. So now I can talk about another thing. So the EVC right here, you see how the red cable is in the middle. It's kind of hard to see. Like, there's a red and an orange cable. The red cable is in the middle. The orange cable is on the side. And you see on this plug how the red cable is not in the middle and the orange cable is. Well, that's because there's a pre-made I2C interface on the card that I hooked up to, but for some reason the two I2C data lines which like the third line is just ground. The two I2C data lines for some reason are in a different alignment than they are on the EVC2. So the one data line that's in the middle on the EVC is actually not in the middle on the pre-made plug on the card, which basically caused me 1.5 hours of confusion and pain, because I was not aware that this could happen. It was basically just a random thought of, hey, maybe I just wired something. Like, I actually thought that I wired something up wrong, but then I rechecked and I wired it up correctly, but it's just on the PCB, the way in which they connect is different. So yeah, if you have a 7970 or 280X matrix, be aware of that. You can't use the same alignment on the EVC. It will not work. Like it will just find 0 addresses or give you a bus low error. So GT1 doesn't even artifact this time. Like, we saw this when I overclocked this card, the 780 Twin Frozer. The artifacting we saw is very likely memory, but reducing a core clock can sometimes also indirectly make the memory more stable, because the core is going slower. That means the core is pulling less data from the memory, which means that in turn the memory is under less load. And at the same time, if you increase your memory clock, your core gets fed more data from the memory, which can make your core unstable. Which is what happened with that 780, where we had to reduce our core clock to get our memory up all the way. So, yeah, 435 should work. I mean, if it crashes in combined, I will feel very stupid. It did happen. Usually, like on NVIDIA cards, combined very rarely crashes, but on AMD cards, it seems to happen a lot more often. But this looks pretty good. Like, we're seeing no artifacting whatsoever. This looks like really good. Now we passed. Okay, this should be like a 12.1. Oh, god damn it. Yeah, I know why we didn't see any artifacting. Remember when I said there's still some issues with the card? This is one of them. When you crash in a benchmark, I completely forgot about that one. When you crash, you have to restart the system, because otherwise you will get a score like that, because the card is actually running stock. Like, it's telling you I'm at like 1785 MEM and 1285 core, but it's actually not. It's actually running stock, it's just reporting the wrong thing. That's a really annoying thing with the driver, because like you get that little pop-up sometimes when you crash. Oh hey, AMD driver noticed something's wrong with your system, default settings have been restored. And it doesn't matter if you go into MS Afterburner and apply new settings, your card is getting locked to stock. That's why we weren't seeing any artifacts, because it was running stock. And I just wasted another couple minutes of your life. I'm very sorry for that. So now we should actually be seeing, let's reduce that to 1285 again. There was also all those FPS looked so low. Like I was about to say in combined, those FPS look kinda low, like 1980, 18 FPS. Yeah, they looked low because the card was running stock. Maybe I should just edit the BIOS to be at like 500 MHz at stock, so that you can visibly see that, oh, this is way too slow. Because this is a 144 Hz panel, but you can't really see the difference. Like, the card is in just the range where you, like, unless you're specifically looking for it, you won't really notice the difference between stock and overclocked, even though it's like pretty big. Like, one of the best parts about overclocking Tahiti cards, so 7950s, 7970s, 280s, 280Xs, one of the best parts about overclocking these is you get to watch them go from 40 to 80 FPS in GT1. It's like insane. Yeah, you see here we're like 60, our peak should be around 80. There's a scene coming up towards the end. Yeah, we're like in the 70s now, and we should touch 80 in a minute, or we're not. Well, maybe not. Maybe really needed those 5 MHz on the core, or maybe it's just RivaTune and MSI Afterburner being open in the background that took those extra FPS away from us. But yeah, like stock, this would be like the lowest it would go stock is like 35 FPS, but usually it would be around like 40 to 45. Like even 60 FPS, that's still like 1.5x the performance you had before. It's like you don't really get that on cards anymore. I mean, 1.5x, that's 680, but that's a really damn good core. This core is pretty bad, honestly. Like, from what I've seen, this core is pretty meh. The memory is really good on this card. And that's the artifacting I would expect from this card. Yeah, that's the sort of artifact you expect. Sometimes the screen just goes completely black, but this keeps counting more FPS, and now the video needs an epilepsy warning. This looks much worse in real life than on the video, by the way. Oh, damn. Yeah, I'm just looking at the phone screen right now because that's less nauseating. Or let's just point the camera away, you know? Look at the card some more. Which is very red because I've set all the LEDs I have to red. Okay, we've made it to CPU test. I could maybe just overclock my CPU to 5.2 GHz for the CPU test because it's not really all that heavy. Like you're just pulling 100 watts and like it's not even getting that hot. So I might be able to just increase the clock and run this. Though I've heard the collecting system info part at the beginning is really very CPU heavy, and that might actually crash the CPU. Not the CPU. Like launching the test benchmark is harder to run than the actual CPU test. That's the thing. Yeah, we can also see we're we're technically bottlenecked by the GPU a lot because like this is combined. This should be hitting the CPU as well, but we're pulling like 40 watts, which is what my Ryzen in my daily puts at like idle. Yeah, this is what I was expecting, like 12.1 and close to 14K for GPU. This is like what it scores at 1285, and then 1290. You get to where I am on HWBot right now. Temperature, we're up to 51 degrees now. So this is actually essentially the same temperature I reached in the session before. So lower ambient doesn't really do that much, it seems. And yeah. So this is what the 7970 matrix can do. And as to the next plans, I could just install GPU tweak and then change memory voltage, because 2 gigabit AFR, which is what this card has, like if you look into GPU-Z, it tells you exactly what memory chip you have, which would be nice to have on NVIDIA, but yeah, here, AFR. And this card has 12 memory chips and 3 gigs of VRAM, so that comes out to 2 gigabit or like 256 megabytes per chip. And yeah, 2 gig AFR. I have observed scale to voltage, so if I increase, like this is still at stock VMem, and it's already really fast. Yeah, like this could get even faster. Then, well, for core I would just need to take it colder, which is basically wait for tonight and hope that ambient goes down far enough that it does make a difference. Or maybe I'm just gonna take the entire test bench setup and put it outside in like 5-degree ambient, and then it's gonna do something. And then there's that LN2 port that's still attached to that 580, which I did find out that there's a business literally around the corner. Like I live nowhere, like in nowhere. My internet is 10 Mbits down, 1 Mbit up. That's how much in nowhere I live. But that business around the corner, which is actually like dealing in like plants, like growing vegetables, yeah, they sell dry ice. So I could just get dry ice from literally around the corner, which is like, assuming they have it stock and don't just order it and then deliver it to you, which would kind of suck. I'm hoping they have just some stock of dry ice. Like, if I just feel like benching one day, I can just go there, go pick up a box of dry ice, and just spend the evening overclocking. Like, that's really nice, because if you would order dry ice, like, it boils away into nothingness really, really fast, even if you insulate it in, like, a box, I've heard. So when you order it online, pretty much the day you get it delivered on, you have to use it, unless you lose, like, half of it, and, I mean, you pay for that stuff, and it's not exactly cheap. Like, it's more than €1 per kilogram. Like, me being able to just go down one street, then turn left, and pick up dry ice is really nice. Which, yeah. Speaking of dry ice, and I've talked about salty croissant a lot in the video. That 280X that's currently holding the second place on HWBot, he actually is going to send that card to me. Originally, he asked me if I wanted to have a 680 classified that he wanted me to overclock on dry ice and then send back to him. And he said, well, if I'm sending that to you, do you want my 280X as well? Because he's done with that card, he said. Doesn't really need it anymore. He's okay with the scores he got, but he thinks I can totally take the first place if I do dry ice on it, since he just went chilled in his second. So yeah, I am really looking forward to that card. Though that 680 classifier is not being sent now, because he discovered it has like a weird issue where it can't go over 1.2 volts without crashing, which basically makes the card useless. So he said he's gonna get another one, and then maybe once he gets a replacement, consider sending it over. But yeah, and as far as I know, I get to keep that 280X as well. Like, if I remember correctly, he said I can keep it unless I want to turn it into an E-Power, in which case he would like to have the E-Power back. But like the classified, I would have to send back, because like those are expensive, pretty expensive. But yeah, like, there's gonna be some interesting stuff, and this one is going to see some dry ice action, of course, as well. Now I know that the core actually doesn't suck that much. Like, it still sucks compared to this card or the Lightning over there, but because this has such good memory, it can kind of hold its own. And wait, what, did my camera just freeze? I just saw on the screen the picture froze. Huh. Yeah, like, if I just take this cold, I think at least 1350 we can achieve. Like, I think we can achieve 1350 with this. And at that point, I could be pretty high on the leaderboard. I think I won't... Yeah, I won't... Like, I mean, for 7970s, there's some LN2 scores. Like, Lumi, I'm not gonna be... I don't think I'll be getting into the top 3, because I would need actual LN2 for that. And a much better CPU. I think my CPU and my RAM are going to hold me back a bit. Like, I mean, I showed you, like, my GPU score was higher than Salty's 280X, but he's like 500 points ahead overall, just because he has a 12 core, I have a 6 core. He has better memory, I do not. So CPU and memory are going to handicap me a bit, but I hope that if I do dry ice properly on these cards, I can get at least like close to top 5. Getting into top 10 shouldn't be that difficult, considering I'm already on 11, and I wasn't even going for scores. I was just wanting to find out where this clocks, and I just ended up doing a score run where I like closed everything down, and I just sent that score in, and Salty in chat went like, yo, that's like the best ambient result on HWBot, and I was, okay, let's upload that. Like, I'm not lying, that's literally how this day went. I was just like, hey, this card is pulling that and that's gone, and he goes like, dude, you're like first place for ambient 7970. So even though the core on this thing is pretty bad, it still does very well. And yeah, I'm looking forward to running this more. I was really, like, before I was thinking this card really just is kind of a useless card because of how bad the core is. Like, I was assuming the difference between 280Xs and 7970s for core clocks is a lot bigger than it actually is. I was thinking you can do 1350 on pretty much every 7970. And because this one can't do it, because this one has like the later core. Like there's 3 different versions of the Tahiti core. There's the Tahiti XT, which is what my 7970 Lightning has, which is generally the one that clocks the highest. Then there's the XT2, which according to Tech Power Up is what's on this card. And then there's the XTL, which is what you get on a 280X. Now the XT2 is used on the 7970 GHz edition. And yeah, from what I've heard, like pretty much all the gigahertz edition 280s and 288, like 7970s and 7950s, kind of suck. So yeah, that's basically why this card behaves more than a 280 than a 7970, even though like it is technically a 7970 gigahertz edition, but the gigahertz editions suck, and 280Xs kind of inherited that. They just get to have a different ranking, so you can still get points even when the card sucks more than the earlier ones. So yeah. And I think with that, this video is probably around 40 minutes long now. I was really hoping that this one would be shorter. The last video, which was like almost an hour. I mean, I think it is an interesting video. I also think people have to do much better things than watching me overclock an obsolete card for an hour. So I would end it here now. So thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and until next time, goodbye.